You may be swallowing tiny bits of plastic with every bite of rice, and not even know it. What seems like the most basic, wholesome, and humble food on your plate might be delivering more than carbohydrates and nutrients. In fact, depending on where your rice was grown, how it was processed, and even how it was cooked, you might be unknowingly ingesting microplastics, fragments of synthetic material that are small enough to be invisible to the naked eye but significant enough to raise concern among scientists and public health experts around the world. Microplastics are defined as plastic particles smaller than 5 millimeters, and some are even microscopic. They come from many sources: the breakdown of larger plastic waste, synthetic fibers from clothing, degraded packaging, tire particles, and industrial runoff. These tiny particles have become so widespread that they've been found in the deepest parts of the ocean, in Antarctic snow, and now, more alarmingly, in the food we eat and the water we drink. And rice, one of the world's most commonly consumed staples, is no exception. So how does plastic end up in rice? It starts in the fields. As agricultural practices become increasingly industrialized, plastics are used in every stage of rice production. Plastic mulch is often laid across paddies to suppress weeds and retain moisture. Over time, UV light, weathering, and mechanical stress cause that plastic to break down into micro-sized fragments that seep into the soil. These tiny particles can then cling to the rice plants, or worse, be absorbed into the soil where they persist indefinitely. Irrigation is another major contributor. Many rice paddies depend on freshwater sources like rivers, reservoirs, or underground aquifers. But these water supplies are often contaminated with microplastics due to upstream pollution, laundry water filled with synthetic fibers, agricultural runoff, or nearby urban waste. When this water flows through the fields, it carries microplastics that can coat rice plants, embed in the husks, or linger in the soil even after harvest. The problem doesn't stop at the farm. Once harvested, rice is transported, packaged, and distributed across the globe. In many cases, it's bagged in plastic sacks, stored in plastic-lined silos, or handled with plastic equipment. Each of these steps is an opportunity for additional contamination. Plastic fibers from conveyor belts, flakes from degraded packaging, or even airborne dust in processing plants can all introduce microscopic debris into the rice supply. By the time it reaches your home, those microplastics may already be embedded in the grains, whether you bought it from a local market or a high-end organic grocery store. And if that weren't enough, even how you cook your rice can increase exposure. Some rice cookers have non-stick coatings made from synthetic polymers. If those coatings degrade or flake over time, they may introduce even more plastic particles into your food. Boiling water from plastic-contaminated sources can also leach microplastics, particularly if you're using tap water that hasn't been filtered. Scientific studies are now starting to quantify just how much plastic may be present. A 2021 study published in the journal Environmental Pollution analyzed several rice samples from around the world and found measurable levels of microplastic contamination in nearly all of them. The amount varied depending on packaging and origin, but some samples contained up to 13 milligrams of microplastics per kilogram of rice. That might sound small, but if rice is a daily staple in your diet, those numbers can add up over time. In another study, researchers discovered that rice packaged in plastic contained significantly higher levels of microplastics than rice packaged in paper or cloth. That finding raised a bigger question: is the contamination from farming practices, or from post-harvest packaging? The answer seems to be both. So what happens when we ingest microplastics? The short answer is, we don't entirely know. The long answer is, it doesn't look good. Microplastics are not just inert particles. Many of them carry chemical additives like phthalates, flame retardants, and BPA, which are known endocrine disruptors. These substances mimic hormones in the body and can interfere with everything from reproduction to metabolism to immune function. In lab settings, exposure to these chemicals has been linked to developmental abnormalities, fertility issues, metabolic disorders, and even certain cancers. There's also growing evidence that microplastics may cause physical damage. When ingested, they can pass through the gut, triggering inflammation or disrupting the intestinal barrier. Some studies on animals have shown that microplastics can cross the gut wall and enter the bloodstream, potentially reaching vital organs. Once there, the long-term effects are still largely unknown. Do they accumulate? Do they break down? Do they trigger autoimmune responses or long-term inflammation? The research is still in its early stages, but the fact that they're being found in human blood, stool, and even placentas suggests the problem is real and not going away anytime soon. Even if individual microplastic particles are too small to cause immediate harm, their cumulative effects over years or decades could be significant. And unlike other food contaminants that degrade or can be washed off, microplastics are stubborn. They don't rot, they don't break down easily, they stay. So, what can you do? First, rinse your rice thoroughly before cooking. While this won't remove microplastics that are embedded within the grain itself, it can help wash away particles that are simply clinging to the surface. Studies have shown that rinsing rice can reduce microplastic load by up to 20 to 40% depending on how it's processed and stored. Second, choose rice brands that use paper or cloth packaging rather than plastic. While this isn't a perfect solution, it doesn't account for plastic exposure during farming. It may help reduce the contamination that occurs after harvest. The less time your food spends sitting in plastic, the better. Third, filter your water. Boiling rice in contaminated water just adds to the problem. A high-quality water filter that can remove particles, heavy metals, and microplastics is worth the investment, especially if you live in an urban area or rely on municipal tap water. Many people don't realize how much of their microplastic exposure comes from water alone. Every little bit helps. Fourth, consider switching to certified organic rice when possible. Organic farming practices often limit the use of plastic mulch and synthetic fertilizers. While organic doesn't guarantee a plastic-free product, it can reduce the likelihood of heavy contamination from industrial farming tools. Look for certifications that go beyond organic to address sustainability in packaging and processing. Lastly, support policy changes that address plastic pollution at the source. Because let's be honest, washing your rice is a band-aid. The real problem is systemic. Plastic waste is everywhere, and it's not just ending up in the ocean, it's ending up on your plate. It's in the soil, the water, the air, and the animals we eat. Unless we address the root of the issue, microplastics will only become more entrenched in our food supply. And this is where the conversation has to go beyond just rice. If plastic is in something as fundamental as rice, grown in fields, boiled in water, and consumed by billions of people worldwide, then it's safe to assume it's in other staple foods too. Wheat, corn, seafood, produce, even salt. Studies have already confirmed microplastic contamination in table salt, bottled water, honey, and beer. There's no corner of the modern diet untouched by the plastic problem. It's not a distant issue. It's not a future threat. It's happening now, and it's quietly reshaping the safety of our food system in ways we can't fully comprehend yet. Every takeout container, every plastic bag, every discarded water bottle feeds into the cycle. The microplastics you're eating today may have started as a coffee lid tossed on a sidewalk last year. And yes, the quantities are small, but so is a single drop of arsenic. So is a microbe. The fact that these particles are invisible doesn't make them harmless. It makes them harder to trace, easier to dismiss, and infinitely more dangerous in the long term. So the next time you sit down to a warm bowl of rice, take a moment. Think about where it came from. Not just the country of origin or the brand name, but the soil, the water, the packaging, the processing plant. Think about how many opportunities there were for plastic to sneak in unnoticed. Rice is simple. But in a world flooded with plastic, even simplicity has been compromised. The good news? Awareness is the first step. Once you know, you can act. You can demand better. You can choose alternatives. You can reduce your exposure. And perhaps most importantly, you can spread the word. Because the war on plastic isn't just about oceans and turtles anymore. It's about our kitchens, our meals, and our bodies. The waste we once threw away has found its way back to us, in the very food we eat every single day. And until we change the system that allowed that to happen, we'll keep eating plastic with our rice, bite after invisible bite.